Life has a way of testing us when we least expect it. Sometimes the greatest challenges come not from our circumstances, but from the choices we make when facing them. Today, I want to share a story about two entrepreneurs, the competition that drove them apart, and the consequences of cutting corners. Our story begins in a bustling town on the outskirts of a growing city. Meet Vikram, a 24-year-old with a degree in business management, dreams of entrepreneurship, but no job prospects in sight. Despite his qualifications, the job market was brutal. Companies weren't hiring fresh graduates, and every interview led to rejection. One afternoon, Vikram sat on the steps of his modest home, feeling defeated. His father had passed away 5 years ago, leaving his mother to work tirelessly as a seamstress just to keep their household running. She'd sacrificed everything for his education, and he felt he'd let her down. His mother, Anjali, noticed his frustration the moment she walked through the door. She was a woman in her mid-50s, her hands weathered from years of needlework, but her eyes still sparkled with wisdom and hope. "Beta, why do you sit here looking so gloomy?" she asked, placing a gentle hand on his shoulder. "The world doesn't owe us anything. We have to create our own opportunities." "But Mom, I've applied to over 50 companies," Vikram replied, his voice heavy with disappointment. "My degree means nothing to them. They want experience I don't have. I feel like I wasted your money on education." Anjali sat beside him and took his hands in hers. "Education is never wasted, my son. It opens doors in ways you can't even imagine right now. But sometimes we need to create our own door instead of waiting for one to open." "What do you mean?" Vikram asked, looking at her with a mixture of curiosity and doubt. "I mean, start something of your own. You're intelligent, you're resourceful, and you're hungry for success. Use these things. Look around our neighborhood. People are always looking for quality products at fair prices. There's opportunity everywhere if you have the eyes to see it." That evening, Vikram took his mother's words to heart. He spent hours walking through the local market, observing everything: the vendors, their customers, the types of products flying off shelves, and most importantly, the gaps in the market. He noticed that while there were dozens of vendors selling samosas, spring rolls, and packaged snacks, there wasn't a single stall offering fresh, made-to-order snacks with transparency about ingredients. Most people complained about the staleness of pre-packaged foods and the questionable origins of ingredients in street food. As he stood near the busy intersection of Market Street and Main Avenue, an idea crystallized in his mind. Fresh, homemade snacks made with premium ingredients, prepared right in front of customers so they could see exactly what they were getting. No mystery, no compromise on quality. He thought of something specific: spiced vegetable fritters, handmade and fried to crispy perfection. His mother had always made the most incredible fritters, and people in the neighborhood constantly asked her for the recipe. What if he could turn this into a business? Vikram hurried home, his mind buzzing with possibilities. He found his mother sewing a dress for a client. "Mom, I have an idea," he said breathlessly. "Remember how everyone always loves your spiced vegetable fritters? What if I made them and sold them? They're healthy, affordable, and people clearly want them. His mother looked up from her work, a smile spreading across her face. Now that's the Vikram I know. The one with fire in his eyes and determination in his heart. But, Beta, do you understand what you're taking on? Running a business is not just about having a good product. It's about consistency, hard work, and most importantly, integrity. I understand, Mon. I'm ready. It took Vikram 2 weeks to prepare. He researched suppliers, learned about food safety regulations, and calculated his costs meticulously. He invested his small savings, about 8,000 rupees that he'd been saving since college, into a basic setup, a small portable cart, basic cooking equipment, and ingredients for the first batch. He set up his stall in the same market where he'd gotten his inspiration. The first morning was nerve-wracking. He'd prepared 50 portions, each carefully wrapped in paper, priced at just 25 rupees, a price that covered his costs, gave him a small profit, and was still affordable for common people. His first customer was an elderly man who seemed skeptical. "Fresh fritters? How fresh?" he asked, examining the steaming plate. "Made this morning, sir. I used fresh vegetables purchased from the supplier at dawn, and they were fried not more than 15 minutes ago," Vikram replied confidently. The man bought a portion. Vikram watched anxiously as he took the first bite. The man's eyes widened. Then he smiled. "This is excellent. This reminds me of the fritters my grandmother used to make. I'll tell my family." By midday, he'd sold 30 portions. By evening, all 50 were gone. More importantly, people were talking about him. Word of mouth, the most powerful marketing tool, was working in his favor. Over the next month, Vikram's business flourished. He expanded his menu slightly, adding crispy potato wedges with house spices, grilled corn with herb butter, and samosas stuffed with paneer and vegetables. He maintained the same principle: fresh, made-to-order, quality ingredients, and fair pricing. His mother worked with him on weekends, helping him prep ingredients and manage the orders. She was proud, not just of his success, but of the integrity he demonstrated daily. He turned away customers who asked him to make larger batches in advance, explaining that they deserved only fresh products. He refused to use expired ingredients or shortcuts, even when suppliers tempted him with cheaper, older stock. Within 3 months, Vikram was earning enough to help his mother quit her seamstress job. His little stall had become an institution in the market. Families would take detours specifically to visit him. College students would gather there during lunch breaks. Office workers would order through him for their evening snacks. But success breeds jealousy. A few stalls down from Vikram was another young man named Arjun. He was a few years older than Vikram, with a natural charm and an appetite for quick profits. Arjun also sold snacks, but his approach was different. He focused on volume and speed rather than quality. For months, Arjun had been doing moderately well, but nothing spectacular. He watched Vikram's meteoric rise with growing resentment. One afternoon, Arjun approached Vikram with a fake smile. "You've got quite the operation here, friend." Business is booming, huh?
It's going well, Vikram replied politely.
Hard work and good products. That's the formula.
Arjun laughed. Hard work? You're just lucky.
I could blow you out of the market anytime I wanted.
Vikram didn't take the bait.
He simply smiled and returned to serving his customers.
But Arjun was serious.
That very night, he formulated a plan. The next morning, Arjun completely revamped his stall. He created an eye-catching banner proclaiming, "Snack Revolution, 50% cheaper than anyone else." He hired 2 additional workers to manage the increased volume he was anticipating. Then he did something Vikram would never do. He cut corners aggressively. He sourced vegetables from a wholesale distributor who sold rejected batches at rock-bottom prices, vegetables that were past their prime but still technically sellable. He switched to a cheap, low-quality cooking oil that left a distinct chemical aftertaste. He pre-prepared large batches of food in the morning and stored them, reheating them throughout the day under heat lamps. His ingredients weren't fresh, they were convenient. But his prices were undeniably low. What should have cost 25 rupees, he sold for 10 rupees. Initially, Vikram barely noticed. Then, within a week, he saw the impact. His customer base dwindled as people were drawn to the spectacle and bargain of Arjun's operation. The collective voice of the market shifted. Suddenly, everyone was talking about Arjun's stall, not Vikram's. Vikram watched his daily earnings drop from 800 rupees to barely 300. He was devastated. His mother noticed his declining mood and confronted him during their evening meal. "What's troubling you, Beta?" "Your silence is louder than words," she said. "Arjun, the vendor 2 stalls down, he's put me out of business practically. He's doing everything cheaper than me, and everyone's flocking to him," Vikram explained, his frustration evident. His mother set down her fork and looked at him seriously. "And how is he doing it? Is he maintaining the same quality?" "I don't know exactly, but his prices are impossibly low. I've calculated my costs 1,000 times, and there's no way he's using quality ingredients at those prices." "Then that's your answer," his mother said simply. "He's compromising on something. Quality, freshness, or safety. The question is, are you going to compromise too? Or are you going to stand by your principles?" Vikram felt torn. He'd built something he was proud of, but it was crumbling before his eyes. That night, he didn't sleep. He lay awake, wrestling with the temptation. He could source cheaper ingredients. He could reduce portions. He could cut his own wages temporarily. He could compete on price alone. But every time he considered these options, he remembered the pride in his mother's eyes when she watched him work. He remembered the elderly man who said the fritters reminded him of his grandmother. He remembered building something honest. Instead of compromising, Vikram decided to investigate. He needed to understand exactly what Arjun was doing. Early one morning, before his stall opened, Vikram discreetly followed Arjun to his supplier. He watched as Arjun purchased a large box labeled Class C Vegetables Bulk Discount. Then he followed him to a chemical supplier shop where Arjun bought cans of cheap cooking oil in bulk. Vikram made notes of everything. He observed Arjun's pre-preparation methods, his storage practices, and his reheating techniques. Everything pointed to corners being cut, serious corners that could potentially affect customer health. Back home, Vikram shared his findings with his mother. Her face grew serious. "This could make people sick, Beta." Food safety is not something to take lightly. These aren't just business practices, they're potentially harmful. What should I do, Mom?
If I speak up, people will think I'm just a sore loser complaining about competition.
Then you need proof, and you need someone with authority to validate your concerns, his mother advised wisely. Vikram reached out to a contact his mother had, Mr.
Sinha, who worked in the municipal health department. After explaining his concerns thoroughly and providing his observations, Mr.
Sinha agreed to conduct an inspection. The next morning, Mr. Sinha, accompanied by another official, arrived at the market.
Vikram's heart was pounding.
This was risky. If he was wrong, he'd look ridiculous. If he was right, but Arjun found out he'd reported him, there could be conflict. But he had to trust that integrity would ultimately prevail. When the officials approached Arjun's stall and identified themselves, Arjun's face went pale.
The officials examined his ingredients, his storage methods, his cooking equipment, and his oil.
They took samples.
Vikram continued working at his own stall, trying not to draw attention, but keeping an eye on the situation.
Within an hour, the officials called Arjun over for a formal conversation.
Even from a distance, Vikram could see Arjun's defensive posture, his frantic gestures, his crumbling composure.
By midday, the news had spread through the market like wildfire.
The health department's findings were damning.
Arjun had been using Class C vegetables that had begun to ferment, using cooking oil that was recycled and dangerous for consumption, and storing prepared food improperly for extended periods. The officials issued a closure notice immediately.
Arjun's stall was shut down, pending a formal hearing.
The vendor was devastated. But more importantly, the community was protected.
The health department official, Mr.
Sinha, made a point to visit Vikram's stall that afternoon.
"I've heard a lot about your operation, Mr."
Sinha said warmly. Your mother's friend mentioned you maintain high standards.
"I'd like to do a routine inspection of your setup, for reference, you understand,
to show other vendors what proper practices look like." Vikram's inspection was flawless. His ingredients were fresh, sourced from registered suppliers. His oil was food grade and stored properly. His utensils were clean. His storage methods were appropriate, and his personal hygiene was impeccable. Mr. Sinha was impressed. This is exactly how food businesses should operate, Mister. Sinha said, shaking Vikram's hand.
"You're doing an excellent job."
Keep this up.
What followed was remarkable.
Mr. Sinha, in his official capacity, mentioned Vikram's stall as a model of food safety during a community health seminar. Local newspapers picked up the story. Young entrepreneur maintains integrity, reports unsafe competitor. Instead of making Vikram look like a tattler, the story positioned him as someone who cared about community welfare more than his own profit. His reputation soared. Customers who'd been tempted by Arjun's cheap prices returned to Vikram with renewed appreciation. Moreover, new customers came specifically because they trusted that his stall met the highest safety standards. His daily earnings jumped from the pre-Arjun level to even higher. He hired an additional helper and eventually expanded to a proper small shop instead of just a cart. His mother became the official recipe developer and quality controller. They standardized their processes, created a simple logo, and began receiving requests from other neighborhoods to open branches. As for Arjun, the health department's formal hearing found him guilty of operating an unsafe food establishment. He was fined heavily, his business license was suspended for 6 months, and his reputation in the community was destroyed. When he eventually tried to reopen after his suspension, No one trusted him. He struggled for years before finally closing shop for good. During an interview a year later, a local journalist asked Vikram if he had any regrets about reporting Arjun. None whatsoever, Vikram replied confidently. See, I didn't report Arjun because I wanted him gone. I reported him because what he was doing was dangerous. If I'd simply matched his prices by using the same shortcuts, I wouldn't have succeeded. I would have compromised. And eventually, I would have harmed people. The guilt would have eaten me alive. The journalist pressed further. But weren't you tempted? You were losing money. Your business was declining. Vikram smiled. Of course I was tempted. But my mother taught me something crucial. Short-term losses for long-term integrity always wins. I'd rather have small profits from genuine work than large profits from shortcuts. This story isn't just about snacks or a market competition. It's about a principle that applies everywhere in life. Whether you're building a business, pursuing a career, or simply living day to day, you'll face moments when compromising seems easier than maintaining your standards. You'll see others succeed through dishonesty and wonder if your integrity is holding you back. You'll face financial pressure and be tempted to cut corners. You'll be frustrated when good work isn't immediately rewarded. But here's what Vikram learned, and what I hope you take away from this story. Integrity is not a constraint on success. It's a foundation for genuine, sustainable success. When you maintain integrity, you build trust. When you build trust, you build loyalty. When you build loyalty, you build something that can't be easily replicated or destroyed. Arjun's business collapsed because it was built on deception and shortcuts. Vikram's business flourished because it was built on genuine value and honest practices. In our world of quick wins and shortcuts, integrity has become rare. And that rarity makes it incredibly valuable. People notice it. They gravitate toward it. They support it. So the next time you're tempted to cut corners, to compromise your standards, or to abandon your principles for short-term gain, remember Vikram's choice. Remember that the long-term satisfaction of knowing you did things right is worth infinitely more than the fleeting satisfaction of winning through dishonesty. Your reputation, your self-respect, and your peace of mind are worth more than any amount of quick profit. Build something genuine. Build something you're proud of. That's the real recipe for success. Thank you for watching.
If this story resonated with you, please share it with someone who needs to hear it.
I will. Thank you. I know exactly who I'm going to tell.